Hello and welcome to Wild Sounds Civilized and a very special life update, podcast update episode. So how have you been?
Good. I've been good. What about yourself?
I've been busy. I've been working, and then when I'm really lucky, I get a little bit of extra work and I do some more. We've had concert season, so a total of 13 concerts with my day job, 2 with my sort of evening job, another 2 this coming weekend, but I don't think I have to go to those, so
Nice.
feeling good about that. Just lots of hosting concerts, being in concerts, concerting. It's just the life. And now it's pretty much smooth sailing until the end of June, and I am ready.
Good.
How's work been for you?
Work has been busy. I've been increasing my hours. Yep.
Is that a positive or a negative?
It just sort of happened. We got a new manager, and so before I had reduced hours, and she, I guess, didn't get that memo. And so they've just slowly been increasing. It used to be I had 4 days of availability.
Right.
And they started taking those 4 days and putting them back to back so that I would work like 8 days straight.
Jeez.
And now it's just sort of continued. I was like, oh, that's got to be a mistake. They know I'm available for 4 days, so.
Yeah.
But I mean, the paycheck is better. So it's hard because initially I cut down the hours for my mental health. Now I'm in a better place.
Yeah. So it's almost like there's no reason to cut them back down.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. As long as you're not burning yourself out, which, I'll be honest, I have done this.
Yeah.
That is where I'm at. I am burnt out. I am toast. I feel like you go through these periods of life, right? Where you're ready for something and where you're not ready for something. It sounds like you're pretty ready.
I think it's easier to be in the habit. Like, the hours are crappy.
Right.
They're crappy hours. There's no ways around that. It's easier to be in the habit of it.
Right.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Because I get up at 3:30 a.m. every day.
I can't imagine.
And then I actually feel worse on the day, like my days off when I sleep until 7:30.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you there. Yeah. How do you, do you just not make evening plans ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
I go to bed at 7:30.
Wow. I had a similar but not the same thing happen when I started private teaching, and my hours were pretty much 3:30 to 9 every weeknight. It just totally demolishes any social time you can have because you're working. Nobody's available before 3 p.m. really, and the people that are available after 9 p.m. are possibly not the people that I am friends with.
Right.
I'm not really the person to go out at 11, but I do know people who do that, who they almost become, I don't want to say nocturnal, I want to say semi-nocturnal. You go to bed at 2 and you wake up at noon, and then your whole life kind of shifts towards those hours, and I am not about it. I am so happy to have a day job.
I would like to have a day job.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm doing conventional work with a company, and then what I'm thinking of as freelance with stuff like this podcast, YouTube, writing, all of that.
Yeah, moving more towards something that you are doing for yourself rather than for a giant corporation.
Yes.
I'm a fan of that.
I don't know that it's ever going to be fully sustainable. Realistically, the niche I'm in is small, but there's this part of me that wants to do bigger projects, and I feel like if I put more time into them.
Yeah, totally. I hear you there. It's tricky because I think whenever you work in, or at least this is my experience right now, working in the arts, you feel like you need to monetize everything. I had an issue last year when I got burned out the other time, where I was trying to capitalize on my love of knitting, and I was working at a knitting shop on the weekend, and I was teaching and running the knitting circle. And I'd run the knitting circle for years at that point beforehand, but this was actually monetizing it, and it crashed and it burned and it failed so badly within 3 or 4 months. I just could not sustain it, even though I'd had the knitting circle the whole time unpaid.
Right.
All of a sudden that pressure made it harder. And for that reason, I feel like I couldn't monetize every creative endeavor that I have. I don't know how you would figure out the line between what's a creative endeavor for you and what's a creative endeavor for you, but also it's work.
Right. Like the idea of monetizing your hobbies.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that because in some of my vlogs, I've shown some of the crochet projects I'm working on.
Yep.
And the response that I've got has been, oh, can you do some tutorials? I'd love to see you show this. If we're being totally honest, a crafting channel is way more sustainable than a weird bookish channel. Craft companies are way more likely to sponsor you, to work with you, to send you free product.
That's really interesting. I never would have thought that there would be a divide that big between what type of channel you have. I mean, assuming it's not like a gaming channel or like a beauty guru channel. Those seem to be the really big ones, but I would assume that most smaller topics would be pretty much even. But is that like you would get a different, like, I think it's CPU? Or is it just like the brand deals would be different?
I think it would be the brand deals.
Yeah.
And like it would mean cutting out the cost of buying the crafting stuff, right?
Oh man.
Right? Because you would be like there's the whole We Are Knitters thing is the thing I've been looking at for a while. It's like a bag, not sponsored. But it's like a bag and it comes with the yarn and the needles and the pattern and everything you need to make this thing. And I'm like, that's really appealing. And I'm sure that if you have a big enough channel, you could probably write to them and be like, hey, I'll promote you if you send me the thing. Yeah. I get to like this $100 sweater for free. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm sure that you could negotiate that with companies. So your hobby is suddenly free, but at the cost of turning it into
work.
Yeah.
That's so tricky. And that is pretty much exactly what I tried to do with my knitting last year. I can't imagine, like, I don't know, being so beholden to what is a release. And I say that knowing fully that I'm a music teacher, and so that is pretty much what I do. But I feel like I've come to terms with that type of release being also work, if that makes sense. Like, I've had time to get used to it, was trained for it. It feels normal for this type of work.
Right, but is it different because you still get to do music for yourself?
Somewhat. It's different, especially because I did focus primarily on early childhood music education, meaning that kids' music is kind of more my work. That being said, I still absolutely like get excited to find and perform music for them, but it is different. Like, I'm in a early music ensemble. We just had a big concert that was also happening while everything else was happening at work. Very terrible timing. And in that one, I just play for fun. And by fun, I mean I try to find the time to practice. And realistically, I do more sight reading than I should. But yeah, it's so difficult because there is no clear barrier between what is a creative endeavor and what is self-care in my mind and what is the daily slog, for lack of a better term. I think it makes it easier to burn out because I love my job. I mean, more work comes available and I'm happy to take up the slack. I truly enjoy what I do and feel like it is meaningful and it sparks joy. So why wouldn't I do more work? And then I end up in this situation where I am scheduling when to shower and I have eaten 2 Rice Krispie squares and a granola bar and it's 9 p.m. I find myself in situations where I really enjoy doing it one week and the next week I'm not as enthused about my lesson plan and it becomes so much harder because that joy isn't necessarily there.
Right.
I don't know what the reconciliation there is and how you navigate that in an artistic field, but I think that it's so much more emotional labor than it is to check in and check out of, I don't know, waitressing. I'm not saying that waitressing is not hard. I did it for like 2.5 weeks and it was the worst time of my life. But it's a different type of labor and it's a lot of labor that you can't charge for. What have you been watching lately? Nothing? Okay, me too. I feel less bad then. Whoa!
I mean, I think that like the only time I really watch television is with Miles, my partner Miles. I keep looking at this thing whenever I'm not like directly talking to you. I'm giving like the podcast context.
This is our audience. It's a little black ball.
Yeah.
Oh, Black Mirror. I watched that. I watched the new series of that.
Yeah?
Did you check it out?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah. It went downhill. It was good, but it wasn't good.
Okay.
I don't know. I always love a sci-fi serial.
I'm watching Huang's World with Miles. It's a food culture thing.
Okay.
So he is a Chinese American, and he is traveling all over the world looking at food in different places, how food brings communities together, how food travels with immigrants, how immigrant communities sort of fit into other communities, and it's just basically food porn. 45 minutes of food porn.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel like I missed out on the travel gene. Do you know when people are like, oh, I love to travel, you're young, you've got to go places and see things and travel? I just don't have that. It's just not in me. Like, I'd be like, sure, I'd go to a place, but I wouldn't drop $5,000 to go on a place, trip to a thing. I just don't feel that way, and in some ways I would almost prefer like a staycation over a vacation. I don't like hot weather. I don't like the beach. I don't like swimming. I don't like the sun. Yeah, I'm just a party pooper.
Those are all of my favorite things.
I don't get it, I think. And maybe I just haven't traveled enough, but I feel like I am at the very least averagely well traveled. But I watch these like food documentaries, and I feel like if I watch them with someone, that other person is always going like, oh yeah, like I would go there. I would go to Bali. I would eat Balinese food. That's so exciting. We could go to Bali. And I just have we saw the show, like pretty much know what's going to happen, right? Like you're just going to spend a lot of money to have like the experience that you knew about.
But I want to have the experience.
I know, but what differentiates the experience itself from the little sort of gift-wrapped presentation that you can watch from the comfort of your home?
I feel like I like vacations away from home. I do like a staycation, but the problem for me with a staycation is that it turns into, now you booked a week off to do all the things that you couldn't do like during the work week.
Totally.
So it's like a week of deep cleaning the house and deep cleaning the car because you haven't vacuumed out that winter salt and it's been 2 years.
Yeah, you make a very good point. And I wonder if that maybe ties back to burnout and self-care. Because, I mean, you just described what this week will be for me.
Right.
Now that concerts are over, I'm meeting with a few people, but I'm mainly just doing work around the house. I am hopefully getting ready to move. But what does it say about us that we need to spend thousands of dollars to go somewhere across the world to actually just chill out? And that's not to say that I wouldn't travel. Like, I feel like if we post this and then I'm like, by the way, going to Japan, it's going to sound weird, but like I would go to a place if there was a reason to go, if there was like a convention or something exciting. And I would go to a place if it was cheap enough, to be honest. I would go to a place with friends, and I would go to a place nearby for like a short little reset. But I don't understand this obsession with travel, especially with like our age group.
Because a lot of us can't afford houses.
Oh, yeah.
You're saving for the short term, right?
That makes sense.
I think if we want to be super pessimistic, there is also the impending doom of our planet. And like the fact that a lot of places will be underwater when those ice caps eventually melt.
Yeah.
You're welcome for the existential crisis.
Fun.
Somebody recently expressed to me the idea that she wants to go and do all the things because at some point she might be that elderly person that's like, that one time I went to London, it used to be a place where you could go to. Now it's underwater.
Yeah, I guess I just don't see the way that that serves someone. And again, it's partially that I just don't get it. And partially just that I prioritize differently.
Yeah.
It just seems like, and maybe this is just my friend group, every time I talk about anything out with friends, it just ends up going into like a travelogue. There's something more exciting about going to a place that has very little documented travel information, or something that you purposefully don't look things up. Like, I almost wish I could travel the way people did in the 40s, where you just go somewhere and you have no idea what it's going to be. I feel like that's way more exciting, but with the vast amount of media showing you what a place is, what you can expect, where to go, here's the map, here's the tour, you know you're going to hit this place, and you're going to go to that spot, and then you're going to come back to the hotel. Like, it feels so regimented, and it feels like there's no real wonder there.
I don't think a picture can capture the experience of being there. Like, I have looked at pictures of Peggy's Cove for years, right? Yeah. And like last year was the first time I actually got to go there. And I feel like looking at the very like clean, probably slightly photoshopped photos, because there are no humans in any of these photos. No. Somehow the photographer found a point in time where there were 0 people on the rocks, right?
3 a.m.
Yeah, but the sun is out. So, like, they probably photoshopped all of those people out. Like, the experience of actually being there, of, like, standing on the water's edge, hearing it, having, like, the wind on your face, blowing your clothes. Seeing that on film doesn't quite translate. And then you leave with, like, your hair all fucked up from the salt water. Seeing it in a video or in pictures is completely different for me from, like, physically being in that space.
Totally. Yeah, that's not to say I don't experience things. That's not what I'm trying to say. I feel like the experience is enjoyable, for sure. I just don't place the value on them that I think others do. But that reminds me a lot of what we're going to talk about in a little bit with the sort of Sturm und Drang movement and romanticism versus rationalism and the Enlightenment. Total side note, but we're essentially making these arguments right now for both movements, which very exciting from a classical music perspective. Have you listened to much classical music? Like, since starting the podcast, do you find yourself... Nope. Okay, cool. All right.
But I don't listen to music in general. Like, I only recently switched out the CD in my car from one sort of generic pop band to another. Switched it out from...
Saucy.
From Five Sauce to the new Jonas Brothers album.
Wow.
Yeah. I have trash taste in music, and I fully embrace it.
You know what? I think we all do sometimes. That's fine. You're good. This is all good. I found that I have wanted to read more since we started this podcast, obviously because of the way that work has been. I have not, but I did get some books and start them.
Nice.
Which I feel really positive about.
What are you reading?
The Mists of Avalon. It's
it's fantasy.
It's Arthurian legend retold from the perspective of the female characters. Arthur does not have a point of view, like, perspective. Neither does Uther. Like Lancelot, the traditional characters that the story was told from the perspective of are like side characters, and there's all this intrigue and fantastical things going on with the women in this, like, I don't know. I'm enjoying it.
Nice.
I'm enjoying it greatly. Although I started it and then wound up looking it up, which was a mistake, because I found out that the author, Marion Zimmer Bradley, has been accused of some real stuff. And I think this is initially why I started it kind of before things got super busy, and I was positive that I was just going to jet through this book. And I sort of put it down after hearing some of those things, kind of lost my taste for it, and then things picked up, and I haven't even really thought about whether I'm going to continue reading it. I was enjoying it a whole lot. I think I will finish it. It's difficult when you know something about it that you don't want to bring into the text, but you can't help but keep making connections to and thinking about, if that makes sense. And I've bought it already. Like, if this was something that I had looked up before I bought it, like a rational human being, I wouldn't maybe have gotten it. I would have maybe gotten, like, I had a few things on my list that I was picking up, and this was just something that popped out at me. I feel like I just only read problematic authors. This is all I do. It's just getting the worst ones and then just grappling with myself for years. Totally normal, just like listening to the Jonas Brothers. I did pick up an album that I think that you might like. Do you remember the Five at the First concert that we went to? They had their last one of the season on Saturday, and it was works of Beethoven. So it was like they had 2 cellos do like rearranged versions of Beethoven, I think piano sonatas. Anyways, I picked up their CD, and a lot of it is like very modern, even just because of the instrumentation change. Like, the cello is so textural and so like rock and roll compared to like a piano. Like, the piano is great. I love the piano. No shade thrown at the piano. Piano sounds to me too cerebral sometimes. Like, the cello is very earthy and provokes more of like an emotional response.
Okay.
I don't know. I've just been really enjoying modern Beethoven cello rearrangements and remixes, and I think you would too.
Okay.
Yay.
All right.
Have you heard any feedback from the podcast? Like, now that it's out, like the first segment of season 1, what have you kind of been hearing back?
I haven't heard all that much, actually.
Yeah.
The feedback has been pretty minimal, which I was a little bit surprised about because we did show this to my YouTube audience.
Yeah.
So I was sort of expecting them to, I guess, give me the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just because it's not their thing for most people. Like, if they're bookish folks who then listen to this because I showed them a thing that I'm doing.
I
don't
wonder
know.
too if the podcast doesn't engender the same kind of communication. Watching a video, you see somebody's face. They're talking to you. In a podcast, we're talking to each other, occasionally with an aside to the listener. And they're longer form. We're talking about different things. Like, I wonder if just the format is maybe not necessarily creating fewer viewers, but maybe creating fewer responders.
Maybe.
I've gotten feedback mainly from people in person that I know, and it's been awesome. But I didn't get any for like the first month and a half, 2 months. It was just like tossing things out into a void. It's just like, we made this thing.
Yeah.
And nothing. Just dead silence, which I think was scarier.
The feedback that I got initially was technical.
Yeah.
Not actually engaging with the content.
Yeah. I think it's only in the past like month or so that I've gotten some really amazing comments from people basically saying that they love it, but not a whole lot of like criticism, which I'm not quite sure how to take. I'm a person that like automatically zones in on whatever criticism is being given, so I feel like I'm almost looking for some that isn't there. It seems like what I've heard from a lot of people is that they're enjoying hearing this type of content delved into, and they're enjoying our individual perspectives because they are so different and yet so alike, in that we're both, I think, analytical people that have just done totally different forms of analysis.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about my teaching, which I felt like I wasn't even really talking about my teaching. Apparently I was. Yay. And I find that I've had people try to engage with me about things that I've said on the podcast that I've forgotten that I've said. With Peter and the Wolf, I think I was talking about the text a whole lot and the way it was written and things like that. And having somebody ask me, well, have you seen it written this way? Have you seen it written that way? What, like, ideally, how would you want it written? And I'm like, I don't think I talked about that. But I did.
Right.
It's been great knowing that people are listening carefully and that they're engaging. Over the next little while, we have some really exciting things planned.
Yes.
I feel like this first segment of season 1 is almost a bit like a warm-up.
Yeah. Like a soft open.
Yeah. Where we're just testing the waters with a few different things. Part of the difficulty of this in gaining feedback and everything is that we did pre-record this first segment entirely before I think we even released the first episode.
I think maybe we had the intro out and the video out, and then we came back and recorded 3 altogether.
No,
or
we
two,
did 2.
two
we
together.
did the intro and Peter and the Wolf on the same day.
Yes,
And
because
then
we did Spring Awakening and Amps together.
We did. But I think that it was all like done, like midway through April at the very, very latest. All of our content up to 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Which meant that even as we've gotten feedback, we haven't been able to immediately apply it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just talking through this is kind of how we like to do things, almost segments of seasons, so that if we are getting feedback, we can apply it, but we are batch recording, so it won't be as quick a turnaround on that criticism. Hopefully constructive, that we do get. But that's been difficult, knowing that we got so excited about this project. We were in it, batch recorded it all in April, and we have not gotten together to do this in
a couple months. Yeah.
Which is why there's an update.
Yes. Yeah.
How does that experience feel to you as somebody that usually like entirely creates your own content and puts it out with, I'm assuming, a shorter turnaround?
This has been easier and harder in different ways. The YouTube stuff, like I can sit down, film, upload, edit, respond to comments. Not that I usually do in the first day, but I could conceivably do it within like an 8-hour window. Sometimes that's really great. Other times it's terrible. Like, the nice part about having a longer window for this is that you can sort of sit and think. Like there's been so much time to read and engage, and then we record, we get together. There's an editing process that like maybe you don't have to do, so you have more time to think.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth on the editing, so it's gone long enough where like you haven't edited anything since the last Saturday of April.
Yeah.
And in July, I will not have edited anything since the last Saturday of May.
Yeah.
Which is just a very long time to go between creating something and preparing it for consumption. Like, I find that maybe my opinion has shifted a little bit, or I've had another really great thought that I can't just like awkwardly put in.
Yes, yeah.
Especially while editing and you listen to the same thing a few times and you're going, oh, I should have done this.
Right, because if I'm filming and editing in the same day and I'm like, oh, I said this badly, I can just, usually I've left the camera set up.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
So you can just pop it back in place and seamlessly integrate it. Or even if it's the next day, it's like, hello, this is future Emily.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a place in the podcast for that. I wonder if there will ever be that point that we just desperately need to make.
But I feel like that's hard too, because this is a conversation.
Yep.
Whereas a video is just me talking at a camera.
Yeah.
And if I want to interrupt my past
Exactly.
self.
You're interrupting yourself. Yeah, exactly. Very, very tricky. And I think one of the things that I've heard back from people almost unanimously, especially when I poke and prod, is that they would appreciate segments in our podcast. And we 1000% agree, have agreed from the beginning, have just had the hardest time trying to break up our content because a lot of it is so freeform. We cover this vast array of different types of media. Like, I can't analyze a novel the way I'm going to analyze Leader. It's just not going to happen. And I think we've got sort of segments, loose segments, 5 of them sort of down for the next segment of season 1. Saying segment a lot.
So segmented.
We are a citrus fruit of segments.
I was thinking centipede or like some sort of insect.
Yuck. No, like a beautiful orange.
Okay.
Like a clementine. So those are the segments in my mind, not the yucky. The other thing is we would like to, now that my work has slowed down and can pick up some slack and the summer is upon us, move to bi-weekly releases, which will hopefully shorten some of that turnaround time for feedback and will create more content for you, our listeners, who are very enthusiastic whenever I speak to you, or exist kind of in theory when I look at our analytics. Yeah. They're like Schrodinger's listener. Right. Are they there? Are they not there? Please tell us you're there.
Yes.
I would greatly appreciate to hear anything.
Tweet at us. I'm here.
I think we have a comment function on our website, don't we?
We should, yeah.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, use one of the other platforms to let us know.
There. Just get in touch. Tell us your thoughts. We are asking our listeners if there's anything in particular you would really like us to cover. We would be happy to cover it. We have a lot of exciting ideas ourselves, but I think knowing what the audience wants to hear about will help us sort of direct this ship.
Yes, and I feel like I don't want to put us in any sort of corner at this point because we're so new. Like, it would be fairly easy to just be like, no, we're going to do entirely classical music. Just go through the entire backlog of classical music. And Bailey's looking at me like, I'm not opposed to that.
I don't know, this sounds kind of like good or whatever,
but I feel like there's so much that we could do outside of that.
And I think what's really interesting about what we're doing, to toot our horn for a second, is that it's the intersection of music and literature. It's narrative and sound. It's finding media that specifically explores this and explores it in ways maybe you don't expect. That's super exciting, I think, for both of us to talk about, because it's the perfect Venn diagram of there's a little bit that you know that I don't know, there's a little bit that I know that you don't know, and there's just this overlap area that I think we both just endlessly want to live in. There will also be captions available, if you would like them, on our YouTube channel.
Right. So YouTube does this thing where it generates craptions, as Ricky Pointer has called them.
I love it.
And so because right now we are so small, the process of typing out, like listening to our own podcast and typing it out, is just so time consuming, and we can't afford to pay anyone to do it or to pay for the services that do it. But YouTube generates captions that we can then edit into captions. So most of the work will have been done for us. So if you are in need of captions, or you think somebody who would like this type of content but needs captions, was that even a sentence?
Yeah.
Yeah? Direct them to YouTube.
Yeah.
Direct them to YouTube.
Our YouTube channel is Wild Sound Civilized Podcast.
Yes. We'll have 4 to 5 to caption.
5. Because this is an episode.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, the introduction's there too. 6. There'll be 6 to caption. We'll start at the beginning.
We may be a couple of episodes behind.
Yes.
But we will be doing that. And I think it sounds so small, like you listen and you type out what... I tried it, and it was terrible. It was so time consuming. I think 5 minutes of podcast transcripting took me like 20 to do. And when we have our episodes, as long as they are...
I tried a transcript generator. They will edit out things like ums and...
Oh, good.
So YouTube does that already?
Yeah. I say way too much. Although I notice, and this is something that I notice when I'm in like editing hell, and I've been editing for like an hour and I'm right at the tail end, I'm like, Emily doesn't say she says I don't say I go I'm just like thinking about the actual sounds and like the phonetics. I'm like, is not even when people say and you just end up thinking about the sound and forgetting you're editing. And
Yep. Also in editing, I don't hear the Canadian accent.
It's there.
I have recently edited old footage from when I came back from out east. And like when I came back, my mom and sister were like, you say a boot. You say boot.
Yeah.
You went oot and a boot.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't. I did not come back from out east speaking differently. And I'm editing this video and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, totally a true thing. All my mom's side of the family is in Newfoundland. And when I go, it's a subtle shift. But it's there, and you don't notice it. It just slowly takes you over to the point where the last time my partner and I were in Newfoundland, I was having this conversation where I was like, do you hear the accent? Like, my grandpa's accent is different from my aunt's accent. And he goes, I don't hear any accents. And I go, yeah, I guess I don't either. I guess maybe accents have just died out here. Maybe it's just globalization and nobody has an accent. And we got back to Ontario. First time talking to friends, they're going, why are you talking like that? Because you just don't notice, right? Like, you're so immersed in it that you just, Are there any other updates?
Oh, something that I wanted to maybe ask our listeners, because I have recently experienced this frustration personally, is podcasting apps. We are on Spotify.
Yes.
And iTunes.
I think iTunes did something weird with us.
So we are just on Spotify and our website and YouTube.
Yeah.
We need to get on more places, because a podcast that I recently wanted to subscribe to, it appeared on other things. So then I started looking at all of the things to see if I could get all my podcasts in one place. Mm-hmm. And it involved me downloading another app so that I could put all of the podcasts in one place, because apparently I have issues and I don't want like 12 apps to keep track of.
I think we've definitely got to sort out iTunes. Something strange happened with that I don't fully follow.
So for me, the app is important. So I guess what I'm asking for from our listeners is let us know what apps you use the most, so we can look into applying for those.
That sounds
because
fair.
Like if we can get on more apps and become more accessible, right?
Yeah, and I think accessibility is tricky when we have this weird project in the first place. It's a very specific type of listener that would listen to us. Mm-hmm. In that you have to be fairly curious about either literature or music, whichever one you're less familiar with, or you need to have equally dabbled in both.
Right.
It would be great to hear from listeners and know that they're enjoying this, or if we should start a serial fiction in which we both just sing opera.
No.
Yeah?
No.
Yeah.
No! You never heard me sing.
Okay, new plan. Thanks for listening. Wild Sound Civilized is recorded on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Attawandarong peoples.
Our intro music is Fantasia in D minor by Georg Philipp Telemann, performed by Bigley Duff. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Wild Sound Civilized with a Z. You can email us at wildsoundcivilizedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you liked what you heard here today, you can support us on patreon.com/wildsoundcivilized.